Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. US President Donald Trump has repeated his criticism about $21 million in USAID for India via global agencies in 2012 for voter turnout, calling it a kickback scheme. These statements have put Veena Reddy in the spotlight, who served as the mission director for USAID in India and Bhutan between 2021 and 2024. She coincidentally returned to the United States a month after the Lok Sabha elections in 2024. Meanwhile, US aid grant to India, which has been cancelled by the new US administration, has rocked the political corridors with Trump's big allegations. While the Congress has slammed the BJP for selective finger pointing, the BJP has fired pot shots and accused Rahul Gandhi of colluding with foreign forces to weaken India and its electoral process. Well, the Ministry of External Affairs has vowed that relevant departments and agencies are looking into these really serious concerns. The question that comes up is the next step filing a case? Well, we're going to discuss this. Joining me at this point in time is Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst. Tehseen, appreciate you joining us. First up, there's a lot of back and forth happening between the BJP and the Congress. The Bharatiya Janata Party was quick to accuse and quick to assume as well that this entire gamut, this $21 million, was in fact being pumped into the Congress coffers to somehow make them win or in some way affect the elections. How do you respond to these allegations?
Vineet, I'm grateful that I'm on your show and grateful for the opportunity to clarify this. First of all, these allegations must be taken seriously because they're made by the President of the United States of America. He's not made these allegations once, he's made them twice. But the problem with these allegations are, beyond these allegations, there's been nothing that has been specific said by the President of the United States of America. We don't know what dates was the President referring to. So let me take your viewers and you through a breakdown. First, let's look at the 2019 elections. The reason I say 2019 elections because the only sort of date that comes in is when Mike Pence said, look, there was some sort of funding in India there was some sort of US aid funding in India. That's Mike Pence, 2019. So did 2019 a regime change happen? No, it did not happen. But more importantly, who was the president of the United States of of America in 2019? President Donald Trump. So was President Donald Trump involved in the US aid coming into India? Then that takes us to 2024. Again, your viewers must understand no dates have been told. If 2024 is the barometer, we know that the Modi government changed all rules for NGO fundings. Obviously, this funding is coming to NGOs. It has not gone to the government because logically, why will the Modi government change itself? So it's gone to NGOs. We know that FCRA norms were tightened. All of the data shows that US aid funding increased substantially after 2020. So the question therefore is, who was the Prime Minister of India post 2020 when NGOs received this US aid fund? Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So is then the IB, the RAW, the RBI, the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, and the Election Commission of India clueless that $21 million came into India for a regime change? Now let's look at what $21 million is on today's rate, 182 odd crores. The Election Commission of India says that approximately $16 billion was spent on Indian elections, 1.35 lakh crores. Can somebody show me the math how 182 crores can change an election worth 1,35,000 crores? If this was to increase voter turnout, what was the voter turnout? The BJP talks about the caste census. Therefore, is it the BJP's allegation and confession that the BJP was suppressing Dalit voters, as a result of which they came out in large numbers and voted for the Congress? That is what this money had gone for. And again, if this money is coming and used in Indian elections are not free and fair. So Rajiv Kumar ji is contradicting himself. All of this is a bunch of contradictions. None of this is substantial. I will now take you to the third elections once you give me your second question.
Sure. Well, Tehseen, very astutely you have responded to the question that I asked you, but this always somehow points the finger back at George Soros and the agencies he's been giving money to. The Bharatiya Janata Party was quick to lap up the attack and say that a lot of these companies who received this money were companies working for or in some way attributed or connected to George Soros, who somehow seems to be a benefactor to the Congress party.
Very good question. First of all, let me put it to your viewers. I am not a fan of Porsche poverty or Mercedes Marxists. George Soros, the 90-year-old billionaire, rests very below in the rank of people I admire and like. So I don't think George Soros is of any consequence. But if the Bharatiya Janata Party knows who George Soros funded, by the way, the USAID was started by President Kennedy to increase US influence in the world. But let's say George Soros somehow decided to give money through USAID into India. They know all of these details, but they simply don't know one detail: which election, which year. If that is the case, there was no regime change. If they're alluding to the 2024 election, is the BJP then confessing Dalits were being suppressed? The BJP is shooting itself in the foot by answering these questions. Again, Vineet, let me come to the crux of the issue. The day your Tehseen is running the country, Tehseen will be responsible for what money came in the country. Ultimately, this USAID did not come in cash or hawala. They came in through the RBI route. And we miss one crucial fact that President Trump said today. When he repeated his allegations today, he said, look, this was kickback. Obviously, the kickback was not in India, it was in the United States of America. So money from the US is routed into India and is kicked back into the US. President Trump hasn't given any dates. The Indian government knows who's got it, but they have no dates to give. The BJP knows, but they have no dates to give. And the Election Commission allowed elections to take place despite knowing money came in, foreign interference, and were clueless as always. So was Rajiv Kumarji only doing shairi and not interested in running free and fair elections? That is the moot question to ask. But may I take you to one more point? The only regime change that happened in India was 2014. Now, I believe firmly, Beneath, I believe firmly, and it's my absolute 100% belief, the 2008 nuclear deal, foreign funds and foreign forces wanted to stall the 2008 nuclear deal. Since then, there's been foreign funding, and the entire Anna Hazare charade of a movement and the IAC movement was foreign funded. I told this to all the Congress leaders then, the topmost Congress leaders. I believe that this was a funded movement, and I believe a regime change did happen in 2014. It was funded by people from outside the country that were very upset with the success of India, particularly the nuclear deal, where India got an exception to the 123 agreement.
All right, fair enough. Valid points there, Tehseen. Let me come back to you. Let's get some others also to weigh in on this situation, and perhaps you can react to what they have to say. Professor Madhav Nalapat is joining us at this point in time. Mr. Abhishek Iyer Mitra is also here with us on the show. Professor Nalapat, in fact, a lot of evidence is pointing towards the same figure of $21 million also going to the country of Bangladesh. And just a few days ago, Elon Musk, took the liberty of complimenting Indian elections and talked about how autonomous we are and how well we conduct our elections. Do you think that the Americans perhaps also need to do some homework when it comes to straight away reading from a paper and saying that this entire money went to India for some elections or the other?
Well, Vineet, first of all, let me say that Tehseen argues a weak case extremely well, and that's vintage Tehseen. He's not vintage yet, but that's vintage Tehseen. But let me point out a few things on my own. First of all, we all know this so-called fact-check industry, that you check the facts, you check the facts. A lot of it, you saw on the COVID matter, you saw on the Ukraine war. Anybody who was negative about the Ukraine war, out. That person is speaking falsehood. Anybody who said that Ukraine was going to get in trouble, false. That was sought to be cancelled. So look, this fact-check industry has been used extensively, very extensively, not to promote facts, but to replace fact with fiction. I think all of us here on the program are quite aware of that. There's no question about that. So far as this particular figure is concerned, I did a small fact check of my own, and the conclusion that was brought to me was basically that yes, there was a visible attempt to basically portray the government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi as highly communal, that mass murders were taking place of minorities across the country, all kinds of things which you and I know is not correct. I think everybody else knows. They were taking place. It was not in India, definitely. And so much of disinformation was spread about the Prime Minister right throughout. Don't forget 1998, when Mr. Vajpayee basically exploded a nuclear device, and and don't forget Mrs. Gandhi doing the same earlier. But the fact of the matter is that yes, there has been a lot of concern in the United States that India has been too independent for the quote unquote own good of the United States. But the reality about this is that yes, money has indeed been given basically to smirch the reputation of a particular party, to promote fake narratives about it, but it was covered up under some very innocuous title called promotion of democracies or spread of democracy at the village level or something like that. It was not staring at you in the face the way this particular 21 million was staring at you in the face. So I'm quite prepared to concede that this 21 million was intended for Bangladesh, where a regime change operation did succeed. It succeeded in Ukraine also, if I may point out. And the entire problems with Russia started during that, when a regime that was friendly to Russia was replaced with a regime that was not. So let me just say very clearly that it was a false flag operation, and titles such as promotion of democracy, promotion of grassroots democracy were used, but money was indeed spent. I'm not going to ask you how they were spent, because frankly I don't have the information, but it is a fact that some regimes are unpopular with whichever is the current establishment in the United States, and a lot of operations take place covertly to ensure that those regimes do not do very well. And yes, 2019, the Prime Minister Modi came back. He is a popular man, let's admit that. But the fact is, in 2024, I mean, the target that I mentioned early on, and that with no less an individual than Rahul Gandhi confirmed before the election results were out,
sir.
were 2 seats for BJP. And the BJP skirted very close to that, 240 seats. So by a whisker, they escaped that. And as a consequence, we have a third term for Prime Minister Modi. So this is my point of view, based on the information that I have. Thank you.
All right, sir. Interesting point of view. In fact, let me also invite Abhijit to weigh in into this. I'm going to use something that Tehseen also said, which I found extremely validating, that Abhijit, if elections or the election process in our country in 2024 is spending up to 1 lakh crore rupees, then what is a measly 180 crores compared to that? That perhaps will not even effectuate the results of a small city. We spent about 50,000 crore rupees in 2019. That figure doubled in 2024. How could this amount, which is minuscule in comparison to the entire amount that is spent on elections, really be of any consequence? Abhijit?
Actually, a huge consequence. You see, you're trying to compare a conventional army with a terrorist organization. It takes us, our annual defense budget is about $75 billion. Hizbul Mujahideen and Lashkar-e-Toiba don't have to spend $75 billion to take us on. When that ISI general made the case to Benazir Bhutto for terrorism in Kashmir, his whole thing was, madam, I offer you a full additional division to the Pakistan army at no cost to the taxpayer. So understand, all you are doing out here is $21 million strategically spread. So 180 crores, as you put it, spread over 1 crore per 180 constituency. Say 1 crore rupees worth of biryani bought wholesale. Biryani and alcohol bought wholesale for 180 constituencies to turn the tide. More than enough. More than enough. So, your comparison just doesn't hold water to begin with. But the second more important thing out here is that this entire fact check that has come out is so scurrilous from the get-go itself. The first thing a fact checker needs to do when he cites a database is to check the validity of the data out there. Now ask yourself logically, if USAspend.gov had all the data, why would DOGE be required working 24/7 and applying advanced AI algorithms to figure out what is what? clearly the US government spending data does not work. Okay, let me show you this very simply out here. This is the first graph, which is the graph of spending on just one project by USAID. It claims this is for election integrity in Nigeria, and can you see the figure? 1.9 billion US dollars. This is from usspending.gov, as you can see. Next graph is the total for, and this was incidentally, as you could see in that graph, routed through CPPS. This is the second one. It claims total funding to date is $190 million. This is such a basic error where you're giving a $1.9 billion, then claiming total funding is $190 million. This is why Doge is working on the ground. Second, notice what Doge said was funding that was to be spent, not had been spent. And what did this researcher go and do? He searched for 21 million already spent, which was spent back in 2022. Now, let's look at 2022. This is another tweet that Doge has put out just today regarding some other accounting errors that happened in 2022. You can clearly see 8 million was entered as 8 billion, possibly in a deliberate attempt to fudge. This is the actual Doge tweet that's been put out. I've tweeted it I've tweeted the screenshot in my tweet thread as well. So this is a flawed database. Now, what is truly amazing is that this so-called journalist, a gentleman called Jay Mazumdar, read his first line. He claims he is an investigative journalist of offshore accounts and finances. भाई इससे बेहतर accountant तो I can get my dog to do better accounts than this. Do you want me to get my dogs online and show you what accounting they can do? They know 2 plus 2 is what. This fellow doesn't even know how to start a database.
Okay.
And imagine, this has to come under an editor and a chief editor. Raj Kamal Jha and Anant Goenka directly responsible for this. What kind of editorial control were they bartofying on this nonsense story? This is a for consideration story. It is a paid story. Remember, Indian Express has had severe conflict of interest out here. They have been partners of OCCRP, which in turn have been getting internews funding. They openly acknowledge this. OCCRP did it together. They did the Panama Papers. They did the Adani hit job. Would they at least put a conflict of interest disclaimer? Not even that. They have
Okay, all right. I'm going to let Tehseen respond to what you've said. Yeah, I'm going to let Tehseen respond to what you said. In fact, Tehseen also wanted to respond to what Professor Nalapat said earlier. Tehseen, go on.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Professor, for the kind words you spoke about me. I'm grateful. But there are two issues step by step. Let's go at what Professor said, and then I'll come to what Abhijit said. That this money was indeed used for Bangladesh. Let's go by that. And Bangladesh and Abhijit also said that 21 odd million dollars in 2022 was spent for Project Bangladesh. In which case, again, the responsibility becomes of the present government. What was the raw desk in Bangladesh doing? We know that the United States at some point did have a problem with Sheikh Hasina. We do know, as much as I oppose Prime Minister Modi rightly stepped in and tried to sort it out. We know during the G20, Abhijit, if the G20 summit in India, Sheikh Hasina was brought to India as a special guest by Prime Minister Modi, and he did then speak to Joe Biden. We know that India played that role, and I credit my Prime Minister for that. So when we knew that this was happening, what was the raw desk doing? They were as clueless as they were at other places, and they were catching up. So then whose fault is this? Number two, let's come to what Abhijit is saying. Abhijit is saying that, listen, this was money to be spent, not money spent. I agree with Abhijit. That's what even that was my first interpretation. But President Trump repeated this statement today, and President Trump said, listen, not only was this spent, there were kickbacks given. If kickbacks were given, where were the kickbacks given? Surely not in India, but in the United States. For kickbacks to be given, kickbacks, money had to come into India. I am again saying money's come into India for biryani and butter chicken and alcohol. What is Rajiv Kumar doing except for shairis? That is illegal in elections. So if Rajiv Kumar can sit over shairis being had, over shairis, while alcohol and mutton and chicken and whatever biryani is being distributed and alcohol is being distributed, the question should be asked of Rajiv Kumar. What were you doing? Can you get out of your ghazal session and get into and act like a gazelle and run with the elasticity of a gazelle? So the question out here is squarely the government to blame. Everything else is shooting in the dark. Maybe Professor is right, maybe Abhijit is right, maybe I'm right. But we don't have any data. We have no answers. We are only hunting in the dark. And the BJP attacking Rahul Gandhi is not making any sense. The BJP itself is responsible for the mess that is created.
All right, Professor Nalapat, there is obviously, no let up in terms of what the current government also should have done if there were telltale signs of any kind of election tampering, sir.
Look, the fact that there is election tampering is obvious. The fact that it's been done by the United States government at that point in time, frankly, that trail is very clear, and it was done under all kinds of very, very attractive and misleading headings. And if what Abhijit is saying is correct, and Abhijit frankly does his research, then a lot of the money that was spent was actually not disclosed. So I would like to say quite clearly, the basic facts are clear. It is very clear from numerous statements, official State Department, XYZ, it's very clear. It's very clear from unofficial statements. It's very clear from social media posts. And don't forget, social media posts are a feast of disinformation. There are players, established players, who deliberately create misinformation and disinformation and disseminate through social media, including that India is awash with communal violence and awash with the murders of minorities. The minorities are frankly a very critical part of our country. They are doing very well, and they have crossed 200 million in number. They have indeed shrunk in Bangladesh. They have gone to almost zero in Afghanistan, and they have gone to almost zero in Pakistan. But does any of these so-called human rights warriors that are talking endlessly about India worry about these three countries? I mean, it's very difficult to find anyone who does. And anyone who does is dubbed a conspiracy theorist. Anyone who does is dubbed somebody who's got some kind of a vested interest in giving a false conspiracy theory. Well, the reality is, unfortunately, there are conspiracies, and a lot of conspiracies turn out to be factual. In my own case, Vineet, I've had to endure this. I mean, I know Abhijit also has had to. I've had to endure this rubbish for so long. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Don't take it seriously. But 2-3 years later, it turns out to be correct. I said about Ukraine from day one, this war is unwinnable by Ukraine. Ukraine will be mashed up. Yes. Russia will come out with a lot more territory. Putin is going to stay in power. And I was called a conspiracy theorist all over the place. And what's happened today? In 2025, 3 years later, is Putin out of power? Has Russia been crushed and collapsed? Has it fallen into pieces? Has Zelensky lost territory or gained territory? Well, none of these guys who abused me then are going to point this out now. Of course not. They're not going to say the obvious. They told a deliberate lie to discredit me and to discredit fact. The same thing happened in COVID. Anybody who was a little bit of a vaccine skeptic, anybody who was skeptical about the fact that at its worst, COVID killed about less than 3%, much less than 3% of people. And the only way out would have been by mass infection, which is exactly what happened in India. Prime Minister Modi did not ask for a mask mandate. He did not ask for that kind of thing. Other countries imposed the most draconian lockdowns. PM did not impose any lockdown after the initial lockdowns. And we had mass infections. I got it myself after 2 shots. My wife got it, 0 shots. But the fact of the matter is nothing happened. But any of us who dared to question the immortal Dr. Fauci was called a conspiracy theorist. And now facts are coming out about him, and President Biden has had to give him a royal pardon. Why is he pardoning him if the man is innocent? He's pardoning him because he knows Fauci has been guilty of all kinds of activities, including funding Chinese research into creating a virus with gain of function that is 100, 200 times more infective than the original SARS virus was.
All right.
And all this now come out as truth.
All
So
right,
for
sir.
heaven's sake, I'd like to say that, give me another.
Right. Let me. We've run out of time. Let me just quickly get in Abhijit into this conversation. Abhijit, what do you think should happen now? Some are calling this as one of the biggest scams to hit India. This definitely needs a lot of digging into. What do you think should happen, Abhijit?
So I agree with Tehseen and disagree with him. In Bangladesh, we've actually been tracking American perfidy for a very long time. Several of the high commissioners there are very dear friends of mine. We used to chat about this. We used to keep tabs on what these people were doing out there. And we won consecutively for the last 15, 20 years. Okay. We lost one round. But please remember, even that one round when lost, we will reverse it in another 2 to 3 years. In India, in the subcontinent, if you're taking on India, there's this rule, the rule of the casino, which is that the house always wins. If you play in South Asia, India always wins because India is the house. Even with the Taliban, you look at them, we lost Afghanistan for 2, 3 years max. After that, Taliban have become our best friends now. They hate Pakistanis more than we do. They are doing a lot more to take down Pakistan than we are. So it's the same in Bangladesh. So I think Tehseen's condemnation there is very misplaced. You can't win all the time. What is a problem right now is the fact that all of these other facts regarding funding in India have come about simply because America was trying to trim its own budget and find cost savings. The fact that our counterintelligence has failed so spectacularly, repeatedly, over and over again, and for all the digitization and financial digitization, we were still not able to track these flows, and there was nothing even remotely called due diligence, which is very, very, very problematic out here. I think there is some serious need for tightening the screws on FRCA. There is a need for NGOs to start producing audits of their own work. If in fact the work on the ground matched up with what was done in claimed was the basis of that funding. Do you know, once you are given FCRA, you don't even have to justify each product. You just have to give an accounting at the end of the year to the tax authorities. Unacceptable. So there
Absolutely.
are financial tightening and clarification and audit measures that need to be enacted.
All right. Appreciate you joining us, Abhijit. Professor Nalabad, thank you so much for being here with us. We have unfortunately run out of time. Would have loved to continue talking more about this, grave issue, if we can call it that. We take a short break now. Be right back.